Okay, thanks for showing up today in class. I want to recap a little bit what we did last class, which was an explanation for why people might not be very good at saving for the future, or they might do something that's tempting now instead of helping themselves by saving for the future. And I want to compare the standard economic explanation to the better explanation, which is behavioral economics. At least it's my job is to convince you that behavioral economists have done a better job of explaining why this happens than the standard theory. So as a recap, the standard theory says any utility that you receive in the future is discounted by some factor. And the further it is in the future, the more it's discounted. And actually, you know, I said I was going to trash it. I'm really not trashing it because it works pretty well in a lot of cases. If you want to talk about lifetime consumption and lifetime savings and, you know, valuing a stock or a bond and, you know, okay, I'm going to invest this money now knowing I'm going to get it later and I'll be able to consume more later. These sort of big picture models, actually this time discounting does a pretty good job of that. So I shouldn't say ignore it. If you're learning about it in other classes, don't say, well, Dr. Lytle told me I don't have to worry about that because it's wrong. Don't say that. I'm not saying that. It's a good model. I'm teaching you the ways in which it doesn't capture human decision making. And the first one, really the only one I'm teaching you, is what's called a time inconsistency. Should I use chat here to sort of like something I would write on the board? I will instead put in inconsistency right there. Everyone can see it in the chat. I can see your chats if you want to chat. A time inconsistency is when it doesn't just mean I didn't save enough for the future. That's not what it means. What it means is if I had to choose between two options in the future, I might choose option A over option B. For my future self. Right now, I'm deciding what does my future self want, A or B? And my current self says, my future self will want A. So I'm choosing A for my future self. Then some time goes by, and that point in the future becomes now. And the same person says, well, okay, your past self chose A for yourself. Do you want to change your mind and choose B? And you say, yes, I don't agree with what my past self says. I want B. This sort of switching, it shouldn't happen with the standard model of time discounting because you should be able to predict whatever happens in the future and anticipate your future self's trade-off between whatever. But it turns out this happens frequently that people do have what's called a time inconsistency. So if I ask you what a time inconsistency is, you guys think you'd be able to get it? It's making decisions at different points of time that are inconsistent with each other because it's not that like I change. Like when you're young, you might like to watch a lot of action movies. And when you're older, you might like to watch more dramatic movies and your preferences change. That's not what it means. It's like the same decision, but in different points of time changes. Okay, that's what a time inconsistency is. And Richard Thaler, one of the founding fathers of behavioral economics, there's his name, Richard Thaler. Oh my gosh, I'm sorry, I'm gonna decline that. I guess I get calls on my phone because it's Apple and it's all connected. Sometimes technology is bad. Richard Thaler asked people this question hypothetically about the apples. You want one apple now or two apples tomorrow? Do you want one apple in a year or two apples in a year and a day? And this sort of inconsistency is people are consistently inconsistent. And then the question is why? So maybe I should go to my slides a little bit to talk about why. And I will show them to you. Sorry, I said I was better at this. How about now? I'll share this. Richard Thaler, his paper is in 1981, shows that people often switch between these choices over time. And so why is that? I need to click here. Maybe then I can go to the next one. Nope, click here. It's that what it is a time inconsistency. This isn't about why it's happening. This is another example of how, even in the marshmallow example, kids are given one marshmallow, and if they can resist it for 5 minutes, they can have two. I think if a kid really wanted the second marshmallow, they would sort of try to find some way to prevent themselves from eating it the first time. If you remember, sometimes they would like push it away or just try to distract themselves. It was hard to do, but I call it time zero. If a kid at time zero wanted to make sure that they could get the second marshmallow, they would want to try to do something to prevent themselves from eating the marshmallow. And this is part of the time inconsistency, is that yourself at different points of time are acting against each other. That should never happen with standard economics, but the truth is it does happen. So let's look more into why that is. And here is this notion of tying your hands. Time inconsistencies can lead to a situation where you would want to tie your own hands. And I think this expression, tying your hands, comes from an ancient poem or epic novel by Homer, a Greek author who wrote the Odyssey. The Odyssey is a classic piece of literature from ancient Greece. And what is the Odyssey? It's a story about the hero is Odysseus. That's why it's called the Odyssey, because of Odysseus, who is the captain of this ship, and he's trying to cross the Aegean Sea, and there's one little island where there are these sirens who have this beautiful song, but it's such a good song that sailors will crash into their rocks and dive overboard and kill themselves. Like, apparently in the story, these sirens songs are so tempting that sailors will come and just die because of how beautiful the music is. They lose their good sense and drown. That's the story. That's the premise of Odysseus and the sirens. But why I'm telling you now is because there's this example of tying one's hands literally to the mast of the ship. Odysseus is like, I got to hear these women sing. I've heard they're really good. I just want to know what it sounds like. But he doesn't want to drown. So what he does is literally has the men literally tie his hands to the mast of the ship so he can't jump off and die. And then his men plug their ears with something so they can't hear the sound, so they won't jump off and die. And he solves the problem. He solves the time inconsistency. Do you see why this is like an extreme form of time inconsistency? Because right now, Odysseus wants to hear the song and not die. But once he gets close enough to the song, he's going to want to jump in the water and die. So he solves this time inconsistency by literally tying his hands. Have you guys heard this before? This is like a classic piece of literature that maybe you're supposed to know as part of your education. Becoming a learned person is to know what the Odyssey is. And this is one part of the Odyssey. He has a really long epic adventure, but this is the one part that it's interesting for me because it's behavioral economics. I have another example, which is called a Christmas Club account. The Christmas Club account became popular during the Great Depression, not because people had a lot of money. They did not have a lot of money in the Great Depression, but I would like to just tell you what the Christmas Club is. excuse me, it is an account where some of your money is automatically taken from your paycheck and placed into an account that you are not allowed to withdraw money from. It forces you to save money for Christmas. Once once December comes, then you can withdraw the money. So it's a way to guarantee that people would have enough money to buy presents for their family at Christmas. This is, again, a form of tying one's hands. Somebody just came to the room. Does that make sense? You're not literally tying your hands with the Christmas Club account, but you're preventing yourself from using money that you may otherwise want to use. So once again, there's a tension between my current self and my future self. Make sense? Are you guys there? Do you have any questions or comments? Maybe I should pose a question to you, which is, do you feel like you would need something like you would need to tie your hands in some way in order to make sure your future self does the thing that you want it to do? Anybody have an example of a time they have
I
tied
wish
their
I could
hands?
do that now.
What's that?
I said, I wish I could do that now.
But you can.
I know I can, but like when it comes to the saving money deal, it's like I've thought about trying to do something like that, but then I'm like, what if I overestimated and now I like don't have enough money for anything I need it for?
Right. So you want to keep your options open, and therefore tying your hands, at least in terms of money, is like, no, I don't want to do that. I get that.
I would rather stay in my current situation of fluctuating around the same like level of savings than try to force myself to save more, but then realize I can't touch it and I actually need it.
Good. So you gave me this example of you'd like to tie your hands, but you actually don't.
Yeah.
I think also like, oh, sorry.
Who's this?
Evan.
Evan. Oh, thank you. There you are.
I think also there's the idea of tax withholding that we do.
Yeah.
Because we know we won't actually pay our taxes otherwise.
Well, yes. Did you know that if you don't pay your taxes, withhold enough money regularly, then you have to pay a penalty? I found this out.
Yeah, I did not know that actually, but
I found this out once the 2017 tax plan was passed. I all of a sudden I wasn't withholding enough money for my taxes. So somehow they changed. Like my human resource department said, well, with this new tax plan, we're going to only withhold this much money. It wasn't enough, and the IRS made me pay a penalty because of that. So while you are correct, part of the reason you withhold your income taxes is just to make sure you have enough at the end of the year, but they also force you to do that because it's their money, and if you wait an extra year to pay them, they'll make you pay a penalty.
Well, not to go down a rabbit hole, but they also force you to file your taxes on your end, even though they're getting every single form that you're also getting, and then you get penalized if you file them incorrectly.
Right. In other words,
that's usually to your benefit, though.
Yeah, what I'm really saying is I don't think the IRS is doing this to be beneficial. I don't think like to say you have an HR department and they don't give you your full paycheck. They withhold some of your money. They're not doing this to be nice, to tie your hands for you. They're doing it because they have to. They'll be penalized if they don't.
Gotcha.
But I didn't know that either until it happened to me. I'll mention this third one I have here about the movies. I thought that was kind of weird, but it was sort of, they did an experiment, and it turned out that when you choose movies for yourself right now versus when you choose movies for yourself in the future, it turns out to be a different type of movie. You like choose the fun movie that's more interesting, more like just simple and feel good movie if it's choosing it for now. But if you're going to choose for yourself for later, you decide, well, I should pick the more respectable highbrow movie so I could learn something. I could really get something out of this movie. And why is that? Why do we pick different movies for ourselves in the future? I think it's because, well, I don't know, do you guys have an idea why would people do that?
I think it's easier to pick a lighthearted movie in the heat of the moment. Like if you don't want to, if you don't really want to have to pay really close attention to it, like it's easier to just put on a comedy.
Sure.
But like if you're scheduling a movie night in the future, you know, you're like dedicating yourself like, okay, like 2 Fridays from now, we're watching this movie. I need to pay attention. Like
Okay.
it's going to have a
So
lot
you
more
need
depth
some
to it.
time to prepare for this serious movie. Whereas if you don't have the time to prepare, you just want the simple one. That could be. I also think it's really just about which one's more tempting. The the lowbrow movie is more tempting, whereas the highbrow movie is less tempting. You don't like, you're not really looking forward to watching a complicated, dramatic movie. But if you don't have to, if you're not tempted by the simple movie, you can force your future self to watch the highbrow one. I don't know. I think this was really interesting. And maybe I wish I hadn't shown you this already, because I often ask my students this question and they usually get it right. So, I mean, I don't know if you guys have been paying attention, but maybe not. I just stopped sharing. Imagine there's a class. Maybe I'll do a little drawing here. What do you think? Like a little whiteboard drawing, right? Let's say you should be able to see the whiteboard. Let's say there's some time, and let's say you're taking a class, and I don't know if I need to do this, but you know, the class is a semester, and it's divided into thirds. I did a pretty good job dividing that into thirds, right? Can you see this? And the professor says, for this semester, you have to turn in 3 research papers, something that you complete and turn in, and I will grade them, and it will be either all of your grade or most of your grade. These are important parts of your grade. And you have, let's say you have an option to turn the papers in at any time. At any time. So let's say, yeah, this, oops, that was supposed to be a straight line. Sorry. Maybe I should undo that. That line was just so bad. I want it to be straight. And what do these represent? This represents, I'm going to do 3. Nope. Sorry, guys. Nope. You can see how bad I am at now drawing. What? Sorry. I'm going to leave that line there. It could be useful. Okay, so imagine 3 different scenarios. The first scenario is one where you can, I'll call this A. I'll call this B, and I'll call this C. So in scenario A, there are no deadlines. And in fact, there's definitely no deadlines. The only thing that matters is that you turn in 3 research papers by the end of the semester. You can do them whenever you want. That's option A. That's like a section of the class where that's the reality. Option B is that you can create your own deadlines. You can tell the professor, this is when I'm going to turn in my first paper, my second, and my third. So you could do something like, oops, like this if you wanted. Say, I'm going to turn in my first paper here at this first line. You know, I don't know if you guys are seeing this quite the right way, but you know, so in option A, you can do the term papers whenever you want. You can turn them in whenever you want. Option B, you predetermine when you would like to have your papers due. So you could say the first one is here, you know, the second one is here. That's supposed to be a 2, and this is supposed to be a 3. Oops, I can't draw very well. But for the option C, you have no choice. They have to be at regular intervals, 1, 2, and 3. Okay. And so for option A, do them whenever you want. There's no deadlines. Just turn them in all 3 by the end of this semester. Okay. My question is, which option is best for students? Which option, A, B, or C, caused the students to get the highest grades in the class?
I want to say C also.
C. Michael says C. Giovanna says C. Most of you think C. Whereas, let me just remind you that if you, oh, did I do something bad? I'm still sharing the whiteboard, right?
Yeah.
With option B, you could choose regular intervals if you want to. If you're in like section B, let's call it section A, section B, and section C. If you're in section B, you could say, you know what? I think the best thing for me is regular intervals. So I'll choose to commit myself to regular intervals. Here, I just gave you an example of somebody who chose, you know, maybe I'll give myself more time for 1 and 2, and of course 3 has to be by the end of the semester. Whereas A, you don't even have this option to commit. I mean, you can try to use your own self-discipline to do the papers early, but the instructor is not offering you any commitment to actually penalize you for turning it in late for A. In B, B and C both have a penalty for turning in the papers late. Okay. So let me read your something. I picked C because it removes the behavioral aspect from the students. What do you mean by the behavioral aspect, Derek?
Sorry, there's I think they're doing a road work outside my building, so hopefully they keep quiet for a minute.
It's okay.
But like with the A scenario, I would think that students would be more likely to, of course, procrastinate a little bit longer and then find themselves, you know, at the end rushing to get all 3 of them done.
Mm-hmm.
And then letter B, I guess the only con with that one I would see is if I'm assuming in that section, you kind of decided your dates at the beginning of the semester.
Yep.
And then as part of the experiment, like once they were set, you couldn't change them. So
correct.
With B, I'm assuming one of the cons, if there are others, is at least like you might have misinterpreted how long each paper might need. And then you could also still wind up in the situation where you're rushing to complete 2 out of the 3 papers or any combination of that.
Okay. You guys agree with what Derek's hypothesis is?
That's my reasoning. It might not be correct, but
no, I liked it. I think it's very good. I think to further the discussion, and I'm the instructor. Oops, just hit a lamppost. To further the discussion, the way I want it to go is to say there's something useful about C and B that A doesn't have, and that is a commitment device. And in this case, a commitment device is something, what happened to my, come on, I can't draw things anymore. Sorry, a commitment device is something which forces you to do something you may not otherwise want to do, right? At this point, 1/3 of the way through the semester, maybe you don't really feel like working on your first research paper, but in option C, you have to do it because you know there's going to be a penalty, whereas in A and B, there's no penalty. That's what we mean by a commitment device. Everybody knows what a commitment device is, but the behavioral economic result is that they can be really useful in cases where there may be otherwise a time inconsistency. So the results of this experiment were exactly as you predicted. C, the students in section C got higher grades on average. How about between A and B? What do you think? C was the best. What was the second best?
B.
A or B?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's correct. B was the second best, and A is the one that gives you the most freedom, right? You have no commitments. Do them whenever you want. If you feel like doing them in the beginning or the middle or the end, you can. But still, students on average got lower grades in A than B and C. So the takeaway here is that commitment devices are useful and they're underutilized. You know what I mean by that? Because the students in B could have given themselves exactly the same commitment device that students in C had, but they were underutilized in the sense that students didn't realize how valuable this device was and chose not to take it. Some did and some didn't, but so let me go back to my slides. That's the result. I thought that was an interesting experiment too. And it says that performances are ranked here. Forced commitment, that was the section C, did better than optional commitment, which is section B, which did better than no commitment. So tying your hands, this is tying your hands to say, the tying your hands would be the optional commitment. You don't have to give yourself a deadline, but if you do, you're tying your hands. That's better than no commitment, but it's not even as good as the forced commitment. Okay, any questions about that? This next slide is, can a single rational choice model explain time inconsistencies? I'm not going to teach you about hyperbolic discounting. It's not so important. It's just this other model that it's almost like theorists who were sort of desperate to say, wait, we can still save this model. Let me try something else and maybe it works. But basically it doesn't. Hyperbolic discounting doesn't fit. So why teach it to you? It's not even that great of a theory. So here's a takeaway. It doesn't make much sense to assume that humans behave as a single decision maker across different points of time. Just this whole idea that we are this one consistent decision maker is not true. We talked about how emotions and desires come and go, but procrastination is a very big point. Also, Oscar Wilde has this quote about procrastinating even more. Like he's planning to procrastinate even later than he does. There's a chat. Procrastinators unite tomorrow. Okay, good. And commitment devices do help us overcome procrastination. Sometimes, here's another example, when you pay for your healthcare, you may pay upfront to have it regular checkups, knowing that if you had to schedule your own checkups, you might just not do them as often. But if you pay up ahead of time, you've already made this commitment. One thing that I didn't write on this slide, and I'm sorry, I should have, and I apologize. I'm just noticing now is what I think is an important takeaway from this research is, it comes from Richard Thaler, which is a better way to explain why people behave this way is something called a present bias. What is a present bias? It's just simply saying, when making a decision, I'm biased toward things that help me in the present. That seems like obvious, right? But if you think about it, this really, really simple idea of a present bias can explain the whole one apple versus two apple thing. And it can explain the Christmas club, and it can explain the movie choice of highbrow versus lowbrow movie. And that is, rather than thinking about the time inconsistency as being irrational, and the fact that we changed our decision for our future self, our current self and our future self are battling somehow, and that's irrational. Richard Thaler says, actually, it's not irrational. It's just a bias that we have in order to help our present self. Let's call it a present bias. And then as the present changes, the effect of this present bias also changes, right? So you want one apple now because that's the present. A year from now, you want the two apples because you don't worry about yourself in the future waiting an extra day. But once that year goes by, not just you has changed, but the present has changed. The new present says, well, I can get one apple now instead of waiting for two. I'm going to do that. So I think you should think of present bias as another explanation for this. Okay, sorry, I didn't actually have a slide on that. I'll fix that. The next, what does this say? My chat's in the way. Willpower as a limited resource. There is a psychologist that is at Florida State, same time as me, who did a lot of studies on willpower. And he sort of says, actually, before I say too much of this, why don't I show you a little bit of him talking about it, if you don't mind. Here is, nope. Here is Roy Baumeister talking about willpower. I hope you can hear it. Let's see. I'm going to play a little bit. Tell me how it sounds.
But for willpower, which is
How does it sound?
That's good.
It's good. If I make it bigger, or is that? I don't know. Okay, let's hear what Baumeister has to say about willpower.
somehow the energy to make you resist temptation and do what's better in the long run. It means being able to see beyond your momentary feelings and desires and wishes, to incorporate the long-term perspective into the short term. I've been talking to people about cigarette smoking as an interesting case of an addiction, and it strikes me it would always be rational to have one more cigarette, because the chances that one more cigarette are going to damage your health are so small as as to be trivial, whereas you get a definite pleasure from having that next cigarette. I don't smoke cigarettes, so I don't know it, but I understand from people say it brings a good positive feeling of energy and happiness and so on. So it always makes sense to have one more. It's just that if you always make that decision of having one more, you'll smoke way too much and probably damage your health. So what you need to do, the task of willpower here, is to take the long-term perspective and say, I have to act as if this decision now is the decision I'm always going to make, and use the single instance to exemplify the other. And that's a bit irrational, but that does really work in the long run. It's only irrational in the short run. Okay, a couple things to be said. With both physical muscles and with self-control.
You guys still here? So he just gave this explanation how while it may be irrational to, in the short run, to do something, if the costs, whatever gives you the most benefit and the lowest cost, you would do that thing just for now. On a long term, it's more rational, or it can be rational to do whatever you would want to choose for every instance. Choose it now. I don't know. He said it better than I did, but pretend like this one decision you're making is the same decision you're always going to make. That could actually change what you find is the most beneficial thing to do. But he's going to go on to talk about how, what I think is interesting is that willpower can be depleted, that it actually, you actually use some of your energy in your brain. Some calories are burned in order to engage this muscle of willpower. And this is kind of a really crazy idea, but there's a lot of evidence for this. And I think he's going to talk about it right now.
You get this feeling that energy is depleted, I'm fatigued, I don't want to do it anymore. That comes long before you're really running out of energy. So you have more energy than you think.
He's talking about running just then, or exercising. Like if you're exercising and you're feeling like you're starting to run out of energy, if you really push yourself, most of the time you can make yourself go even further and even harder on whatever exercise you're doing. And this metaphor of like physical fatigue is going to be what he also uses to talk about self-control and willpower.
Biology selected us that we needed to conserve our energy. Our ancestors didn't know when they were going to eat again. They didn't know when they might get an illness or an infection and would need a whole lot of the body's energy supplies to fight that off, to enable them to live. So the natural inclination is to conserve energy, which both done by stopping the exercise when your muscles get tired and cutting back on self-control, and that's what we call ego depletion. So your attitudes, if you understand you have more, if something is really important, you're able to put in more energy into it. If you're running a certain distance for exercise and you get tired, you might give up. But if you're running because people are chasing you, wanting to kill you, you find you have more energy and can keep going. And in the same way, on a self-control task, when people's willpower is depleted and they'd be inclined to not use such self-control and to take shortcuts, if it's really important, if there's money in it, if it's good for society or help them be the person they want to be or committed to someone they love, then they can do better. It doesn't give them any more energy, but it makes them willing to expend the energy they have.
Okay, I'm going to stop there. You guys, I hope you caught what he was saying, which was that in order to make yourself do something you don't want to do, it takes energy. And whether or not you're willing to expend that energy depends on just how valuable and how important the thing is. So, oh, my computer's overheating a little bit. I hope you don't hear the whiz of my computer, the whirring of it. I don't know what to do. Okay. The research that he did was exactly about how differently people behave when they've been given different tasks and different sort of temptations that they either were or were not able to give into. And some of his experiments were really tricky. I want to talk about some of them. Imagine you're walking into a room, like a research lab, and you're just told to just wait somewhere because you're waiting for people to show up and the experiment hasn't begun yet. But there is a plate of freshly baked chocolate chip cookies just sitting there on the table, and they smell delicious and you would love to eat them, but you're not allowed to eat them. You just have to sit there resisting these delicious, mouth-watering chocolate chip cookies in the room. And you have to sit there for 5 minutes while everyone comes. Okay. Then the experiment starts. Okay. And the experiment involves working hard on a puzzle where it's not even clear if it's possible to answer the puzzle. It's like a difficult puzzle. You have to try things. It's very frustrating. And you're allowed to give up. If you think you can't do it, you just give up. Who do you think gives up faster? The group, oh, by the way, there's a control treatment where there's no cookies. So sometimes there's cookies, sometimes there isn't. Who gives up faster? The people who had to resist the cookies or people who didn't have to resist cookies? Who gives up faster? Somebody has to guess at least.
I assume people who didn't have to deal with the cookies.
People who did not have to deal with the cookies gave up faster?
No, the reverse. People who didn't have to deal with the cookies perform better.
Oh, okay. Yes, although Baumeister is from psychology, and in psychology, you can deceive your subjects a little bit. You can't do it in economics. If you're in an economics experiment, we will tell you the truth. We promise. But in psychology, sometimes they don't. And often there was a puzzle that could not be solved. It was impossible. So the subjects were like asked to do this thing, which was impossible. So when you say perform better, I'm not sure they actually performed better. They spent more time working on an unsolvable puzzle. Whereas the people who had to resist the cookies, they had depleted their willpower, and therefore, when presented with this new task, they didn't have as much willpower left to make themselves keep working on it, and they gave up sooner, like a lot sooner. some of the experiments were like that. Other ones that it was possible to solve the puzzle. And in those cases, what you said is true, that they actually performed, they were more likely to actually continue on to the solution. So they do these tricky things like this. They also did one where with people could drink lemonade versus diet lemonade. And somehow the sugar involved with the lemonade helped with their help them with the willpower for later. It's hard to believe that, you know, willpower is like a muscle and it gets depleted and it can be replenished with whatever, with eating cookies. And you're just giving into this little temptations that you know, it's weird to like say, you know, let's say you're studying for something and you've been studying for an hour, and you may have heard this stories like, well, you know, you should always take a break from study. Just go do something fun for yourself, something enjoyable. There's actually science that says it makes sense. If you can sort of do this thing that maybe you've been wanting to do, but haven't, you know, you've been spending your ego, your willpower to resist that. And it's making you less able to function as a studying. You're trying to learn a bunch of stuff. You're trying to force yourself to concentrate on your book, your materials. There's some science that says actually you'd be better off with the taking a break and doing that other stuff and then coming back to the work. That's not that surprising, I guess. But what I do think is surprising is how much this metaphor, because it's really a metaphor that willpower is a muscle. There's no real muscle that you use that gets depleted when you do willpower. It's all in the brain, but it's actually a pretty good metaphor. Crazy, right? What do you guys think? Do you agree with that? I think that's all I have to say about that. So I think I want to be done with this part of the class. The next thing I want to do is more the next module. The final module of the class is about some behavioral economics that deal with differences among genders. So I do want to start that today. We have another half hour. We should talk about our last quiz. And I think what I've decided is our last quiz should be on Canvas. It'll just be a Canvas quiz that I won't make it even timed. I'll make it a due date. It'll be due by, let's say it'll be due by, you know, before class next Tuesday. How about that? Sound good? So you can, but you can only do it once. I don't want you to do it, see what the answers are and then do it again and see what the answers are. It's not that type of a quiz, but it is low pressure in the sense that there's no time and you could use your books and notes and anything but each other. So I'm pretty sure, given that we're done with this module, we're about to start the next one. And that's our last module. And today and Thursday, we'll be done with that. And then I can give you the quiz that you can take anytime you want between Thursday and Tuesday. And then next Tuesday, I hope I'll be able to come to class and then we can have an in-class review for the final. And that'll be our last day. That's the plan. Does that sound good? And if you do need to make up a quiz or something, I think next week will probably be the best time to do it. Because I'll be actually I'm planning to be in my office next week. I really think I can do it. I'll be better by then. Okay, last thing. Should I give you the thing that I think is the most fun, or just should I jump ahead to the fun thing or not? You know, I feel this present bias that when I have a lot of things I could show you, I want to do the one that I think is most interesting. So maybe I will. Everything else be damned. Future self, you're going to just suffer because it's out of order. But here is what I want to show you. It's actually, you know what? I think it's good. I think it's a good introduction to this module. So here's what it is. It's this puzzle. Have you guys heard of the 1516 puzzle? Anybody heard of it? So here is 15 tiles in a 4x4 grid. And the goal of the puzzle is to get the numbers in order 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, all the way through 15. And all you can do is slide the tiles. The only legal moves you have, like right now, the only thing you could move is the 3, the 11, or the 4, right? So just by sliding tiles around within this grid, you can always solve this puzzle. I'm actually curious, has anyone done this before? It's kind of like a kid's game you might play. It's like a Rubik's Cube or other things.
I
Nobody's seen
haven't.
this
I
before?
have. I haven't.
You've not? Okay.
No.
What about, is that you, Derek?
Yeah, I said I haven't seen it either.
Nobody's seen it?
I mean, I've seen different versions of this probably same game, but it wasn't with numbers. It was like other stuff.
Yeah. Like I was actually curious if anybody was good at it. Like did it enough to have some skill. In particular, I was wondering if a woman would be willing to play this game with me. Are any of our female students? Sorry, guys. I can't use you for this particular game. Who's that? No, none of my female students are volunteering. Well, this demonstration is going to end quickly. What I would like someone to do is play this game with me together as a team, where we take turns sliding the tiles, with our goal being to get a completed solution to the puzzle 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, etc. It kind of sounds like no one's willing to volunteer. I'm not actually giving you free points or money or anything. I just wanted you to do it out of the goodness of your heart.
Professor, I can do it.
Who said that?
Maria.
Maria, thank you, Maria. You volunteered for the other the left, right, up, down game too. So thank you. I'm glad you're willing to do it. So can you see the screen?
Yeah.
So I will make the first move. I'm going to just say one of the numbers, and I'll move that number. Okay, so I'm going to move the 11. Oops.
Mhm.
You see that?
Yeah.
Okay, now you say a number to move, and we're trying to solve it. So put the 1 here, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, that sort of thing.
Gotcha.
By the way, have you ever played this game before?
Should we start it over since the clock's already ticking? Now
I
that
don't
we
really
know
care
how
about
to do it.
I don't actually think we're going to solve this
Okay.
unless Maria is very good at this.
Yeah, I've never played this game, but I'll
But
try.
nobody has, right? I would love it if somebody has played this game before, but it sounds like nobody has. So just give me a number. 8, 5, 11, or 14.
I'll do 8.
8. I'll do 7.
1,
1. I'll do 10.
13,
I'll do 1.
7,
12.
1,
7.
12,
3.
9.
1. We're doing this pretty well together. You said you've never played this before, right? Is it? Can we keep going a little bit? What is it? My turn.
Yeah, I think so.
I'll do 3.
Let's see. 12,
5.
15,
2.
6,
15.
2,
10.
5,
2.
8,
12.
2,
7.
3.
We're working really well together, I have to say. I mean, aren't the rest of the class just so impressed by how really almost every time you've done the thing that I would have done? Is that true for me, for you too?
Yeah.
Yeah. So okay, so we're making a good team. Should we continue, or you guys have the image of what this would be like to try to? I want everyone in the class to think about what would it be like to try to solve this puzzle with another person. You don't get to talk to them and like have a grand scheme. All you can do is say the number, and they do the number. Like I wasn't allowed to say to Maria, "Hey, let's do this strategy where we try to get the 1 up to the top left first, and then we get the 2 up to the next one, and then the 3. We didn't say that to each other, but somehow I think we managed to do it and did it pretty well, right?
Yeah.
And we could continue on and try to solve the whole puzzle, but that will take too much time. I don't want to bore the rest of the class. But I wanted to do this because this game is exactly a game that a researcher used to study group dynamics between men and women. And it's to think about what happens when men and women are partners in a real life occupation project, like work, like a group work that they're doing. And it's something where you can't really tell who did the most work, who was that's another thing. Could you guys tell who was better at this, me or Maria?
No.
I couldn't either. And here's the thing about this puzzle: there is like a best way to do it, and every tile you move can be rated based on how much better you made the puzzle. You know, maybe you made it closer to the solution or further from the solution, or you made it sort of no difference. But every move that you make could be rated, just like, you know, a really good chess program can say, here's what the best move was, here's what you actually did. And, you know, if you play chess, you know that, you know, I could have had +1, but instead I made this move and I'm only plus 0.4. You know, that wasn't that bad of a move. So I didn't find the best move, so what? But okay, so this game is a model of the type of work where your effort and your progress toward the solution is a little bit unobservable by the people who are doing it. Because even I don't know, like, did we do well because of me, because of Maria, or both? So here's what this researcher did. Her name was Siri Isaacson. It's a woman I met because she applied for a job at VCU, and I was on the hiring committee. You guys maybe don't know this about academia, but the hiring, it takes a lot of time because we interview, you know, we probably get 100 applications and we narrow it down to 20. And then we have face-to-face interviews with all 20. And then we narrow that down to 4. And those people fly out and meet with everybody. But it's a long process, but it's actually kind of cool because you meet a lot of people who are interesting and doing the same type of work that you're doing. So if you ever become a professor and you have a chance to be on a hiring committee, I recommend it. It's actually very rewarding of an experience. So I was on a hiring committee in like 2017 or 18 or something. And this woman gave exactly this description that I just gave you of this game. And her research question was, are there differences between how men and women give themselves credit for a group project? Imagine that Maria and I did this. We just kept going back and forth until eventually we solved the puzzle, right? We solved it. Then somebody said, how much of the progress toward the solution was due to you and how much was due to your partner? What would you say, Maria, to this question? How much of, let's pretend we did it all the way. We didn't. How much would you say the progress was due to you and how much was due to me?
I would say equal because like we weren't really talking to each other. It was just kind of like both intuition.
Yeah. Okay. I think I would say equal too. But it's kind of weird because we were actually really in sync. But you could imagine a lot of cases where people are doing different things. Like they can't talk to each other. They can only slide the tiles. And maybe they're like going about it in very different ways. And one person's trying this and the other one, they're like almost in tension, or they're, you know, eventually they get it, but it wasn't easy. Do you think there's a difference between men and women in how much credit that they take for their game, for how much they did?
I
I'm
think
asking everybody now. Maria, you can answer, but I'm asking
okay.
everybody.
I wasn't sure.
I'm talking about in the research, because this was a real study that was done for real money, by the way. This was real money. They had them do this puzzle. They were incentivized to solve it as quickly as they could. And they were also incentivized by answering this question about who got the credit for it. Not that they were paid if they did more of the work, but they were paid if they accurately guessed how much of the work they did versus how much of the work the other person did.
I feel like women would probably be more likely, like, I feel like women like to keep the harmony in things. And so they would like whatever whoever the dominant person was, they would probably conform to that. And I feel like they probably wouldn't take the credit, but they probably did help out a lot by making sure that there was like it was synchronous as they were
Sure.
like playing.
Yeah. What do you guys think? That was Maria's hypothesis. Do you guys agree?
Yeah.
I agree.
She's pretty good. Before we talk more, who do you think did better? Who do you actually think was better at solving the puzzle? Do you think there's a difference or they're the same?
Women.
No, it was the same.
Oh,
Sorry, Derek. That was very nice of you to offer the other gender as the superior puzzle solving gender, but actually there's no differences in the ability. Okay, so men and women in terms of their performance were the same. But there was a big difference in how much attribution they allowed for themselves. And I think, Maria, you were saying women took less credit than the men. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah.
That's correct, by a lot. Men seem to think of themselves as being particularly good at games like this. And when asked about how good they are and how much of the work was due to them, they tend to overestimate it a little bit. The biggest result, though, is not the overestimating of the men. Unfortunately, I almost feel bad saying this. It's underestimating women. Women underestimating their own contributions, especially the high performing women. So this research looked at all the cases where maybe they were equal, maybe the men were high performing and women low, women high performing, men low. The biggest, most noticeable difference was when the women were very high performing and men were low. In those cases, women were reluctant to take the credit that they were due. And that difference basically spilled over throughout the whole data set and overall gave this impression of women being less willing to take credit for their work. And so what I have is an abstract of this. You guys know what an abstract is. Oops, I don't have it up. Yeah, I do. Here's the abstract. The title of this paper is called It Takes Two. I guess that's kind of clever. Here we go. So they alternate moves, of course. That's the game we just played. Can you guys see? I want this to disappear. There we go. All right. There are no gender differences in ability. Women and men are equally good at solving the puzzle. That's what I said. Women consistently claim less credit than men. Okay. This effect is strongest among high contributing women and women in groups that implemented more complex solutions. Why do you guys think that is? The complex solutions. I have a theory about that. What do you guys think? Why would women claim less credit than men, especially when there's a complex solution?
Society.
No, but I mean the game is the same. But if you have
I was sorry, I was saying I mean, I would think for the longest time, I mean, maybe sometimes still, but less. It's men
Sure.
were probably taking credit for things women were doing like over the years, like from olden times. And I feel like that probably plays a part in this here. Like men are more likely to, no, I did most of the work. And women are like, yeah, you're right. You probably did. Or something.
Sure. Right. I have a theory. I'm not saying you're wrong, but what I mean is when specifically analyzing this sentence, I don't usually analyze the abstract of somebody's research this critically, but now I am. The effect is strongest among high contributing women. What does that mean? Well, it's exactly in those cases that the men were low contributing, right? That you're actually saying something bad about this man. You're almost insulting the person. Let's say you did 80% of the work and the other guy only did 20. Maybe that's the reality. But if you say that, if you claim that in this experiment, you're almost like insulting the person. It probably makes you feel bad to say something bad about another person. And it could be that men and women feel differently about that. That could be one effect that's driving this thing about high contributing women. That's my theory. I don't know. You guys tell me if I'm wrong. Then the other one, complex solutions. It's exactly when the solution is complex, when you can't really tell who was more instrumental in solving the puzzle. Meaning that it's like a bigger cloud over who actually was doing the work. And if you have some doubt, let's say you were really high performing, but because the solution was so complex and things weren't really clear what was helping or hurting, you might not take the credit. So I think both of these sort of make sense to me. The high contributing women, why did they take less credit? Because it's more of an insult to the man to say you did worse. And the more complex solutions, that just means it's harder to tell. So you can have more doubt. You have more doubt about whether I actually helped. Other things that this paper found were men are more likely to correct a partner. Why do you guys think that is? I don't have a good answer for this. I don't know why this is.
Let's hear from the women in the class.
Yeah, why would it be that men are more likely to correct a partner than women? Remember, there's no differences in ability. In terms of who's actually good at the puzzle, it's the same. But for some reason, men are more likely to, like if you made a mistake, I'll just undo whatever you did as a correction. And it seems like men are more likely to do that than women. Camilla, do you have a theory?
Oh no, yeah, she can go. She can go.
Maybe she's not
Oh,
there.
sorry, I was yawning. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Your name's popped up. So Maria, you have something to say?
Yeah, I feel like men have a lot of confidence in like in their ideas, and so when they see something wrong, they're like, "Oh, I'll just fix it immediately." And maybe they won't really consider how that could affect someone else, like maybe the way they say it. Like usually I notice this a lot when I talk to like other men like in class and stuff. Like if I do something wrong, it's like immediate, and I feel like sometimes they don't consider how that could relate to the other person. Like I guess like
That's good.
socially, like if it's like how their tone is, if they keep interrupting while I'm talking, like it just tends to happen. I don't think it's malicious, but I think it's just kind of like, oh, I know the right answer, so I'm just gonna say it and we're just gonna do it. Kind
I
of like a
think,
dominance thing.
gosh, I think that's right. Do you guys agree with her? It's weird to say, you know, I'm a man, and I've been in rooms or committees with mixed genders, and I think what she just said is kind of consistent. I mean, let's not use anecdotes and say anything scientific about differences among genders, across genders, based on anecdotes. But in terms of like explanations, I think that makes sense. Why do men correct their partners more often? They don't feel bad doing it. They don't care if it hurts the other person's feelings. They just do it, and they're more confident in themselves for whatever reason. I think that's a good explanation. I'm sorry if this is no. I hope no one's offended by this. I really don't mean to say anything negative about either of the genders. I'm just giving you this paper that was explained to me by a job candidate for VCU that I thought, man, this is really interesting. I'd really like to even explain it to my class. And so I do it now in my behavioral economics class because it's, well, let me say more about why. By the way, am I done talking about the paper? Do you want to see anything else? Here we go. Nope, I didn't do it. Share. Now I'm sharing. Yeah, this last sentence. I want to know what you guys think about these. This is a big conclusion. These results suggest that gender differences in claiming credit may contribute to the labor market gender gap. I probably should have started with talking about the labor market gender gap, but when you hear this, this is not just something behavioral economists study. This is what labor economists and a lot of macroeconomists are interested in. Why do women earn a smaller wage for the same job? And it's like 80% of their earnings. It changes over time, but it's probably over 80% now, but not by that much. And researchers obviously want to explain that. Why are women getting paid less for doing the same job? They have the same education, the same, controlling for everything, controlling for experience and education and occupational choice, because those matter too, of course. Your earnings depend on all of those things. But if you try to control for all of those, there's still this effect where males get higher earnings than females. And ultimately, this paper is like one little nugget of explanation that goes to that says, if you're doing work, you also have to claim the credit for the work. You have to let people know that you did this thing in order for you to get promoted and get a raise in your, and if there's this difference that men just seem to be much more willing to take credit for work, that could be part of it. So I thought, yeah, that is an interesting result. I don't know what you guys think. There's actually, I should say this, there's tons of papers like this. I could have given you, 100, but I picked this one because I have some personal connection to it. And because I happen to like playing the 15-16 game, it's kind of fun too. What do you guys think? Do you agree with the conclusion of the paper? The last sentence of the abstract, do you agree? Anyone?
Yeah.
It's a pretty controversial thing to bring up 3 minutes before class is over.
I'm sorry about that. I apologize if there's a controversy, but I think the point of like economic science is not to say a lot of normative things. I'm not saying what should happen or, if people are bad because of something they did. Rather, it's we observe this fact. The gender gap is a fact. Now you say, given this fact, what possible channels of human behavior might be responsible for it? And a lot of researchers have attempted to explain the gender gap in many different ways. So I don't want you to think that this is the only way to explain it. No, it's one of hundreds of ways to explain it, but I found it kind of compelling that, here's a simple puzzle, a 15-16 puzzle. You're making these joint moves together. Women and men are the same in terms of their ability to do the puzzle, but for some reason, women don't take as much credit as the men. And yes, it might seem innocuous, meaning that who cares what they do about this puzzle? What matters is, when you're actually asking your boss for a raise or a promotion, that's what matters. But the whole point of experimental economics is to say, yes, I realize the 15-16 game is not the same as asking your boss for promotion, but there's some connection there. There's some similarities that may be in part to explain the difference. So yeah, I agree. There's some controversy there, but what I would hope that you guys take out of this is just there are some experiments, some research that's being done that does show there's a difference in the way men and women choose to behave and react in certain cases that may be partially responsible for the gender gap. been, of course.
Professor, yeah, I agree with you. Actually, I really like it when professors can bring in like, even though it's a little bit of a, I guess, polarizing topic, it is nice to discuss something like this in this class. So I appreciate
Sure.
it. And
Yeah.
I agree with the paper. I think obviously I do think that some of the gender gap is sexism, just plain and
Yeah.
simple. But I
Yeah,
also think,
discrimination.
yeah, I
We'll
also,
talk about that. We'll talk about that on Thursday. Hold this. I'm going to get even more controversial on Thursday. We'll talk about, there's actually proof that what you said is true.
Yeah.
I'll just real quick, you take the same CV, exactly the same CV, and you change the name from John to Jennifer, and you ask people about, how qualified they are, what salary they should be offered, etc. There's a statistical difference between that. And literally the only thing that was changed was the name. So there is evidence of that sort of discrimination as well. We'll talk about that
Yeah.
Thursday.
Yeah, but yeah, with that, but I also think it is a lot of women just not feeling confident in their abilities just from, people around them, society in general. So it makes it hard to accept, like, claim the things you've done. So I think
Yeah,
that's also, I don't think it's just like there's like an evil man dictating like you
right,
can't do this, you can't do that, but
right.
it's like a bigger like systems built that makes it
Yeah,
hard.
understood. Yeah, we'll talk about it Thursday, and then we'll have, I'll make the quiz available after Thursday, and you'll do it sometime between Thursday and next Tuesday on Canvas. Does that sound good? I think that's the end of our time together today. Do you guys have any questions? Nobody's saying anything.
I do, but I can save them for next class.
Okay, or you could just hang out and talk to me now, or private chat me now if it's something you don't want the rest of the class to see. But everyone else, I will see you Thursday. So have a good day. I won't end it in case there's somebody wants to stick around. I will stop.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks. I will stop recording.